Hey, Gail.
Hi, Michael.
How are you?
Good. I'm still finishing up my supper, so I'll spare you watching that.
Okay. Thank you for going to the Complete Streets thing.
Very well presented.
Who presented?
Mhm.
It was Joe's office, right?
It was Mass Dot
Ah,
representative. Oh, I've forgotten her name.
Hmm.
Young gal, totally knew her stuff, had done this a gazillion times before,
cool.
but had answers for any questions. It was very good.
Well, I didn't know about those additional tiers of funding. We made, I got us to the point of being able to apply, but This would be our first time to actually get something. So I think it's worth looking into for sure.
Yep.
But would you, when we get to the updates part of the meeting, would you share about it?
Okay.
Cool. That would be helpful. What are you having for dinner?
Mexican chicken, beans, cheese, tomato, green pepper mix slosh. Hey,
That sounds good.
Michael, when it comes time, can you set Bob up to be co-host or whatever it takes so he can screen share?
I am doing it right now.
Okie dokie.
Hi, Bob. And, hey, Nate.
Good evening.
Good evening. Do you mind if I make you co-host? So if we have people while I'm talking, you can help let them in?
Sure.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi, Nate.
Hey there. How are you?
That's a white experience, a white room and like a off-white gray sweater.
That's true. That's true. I had not picked up on that till just now.
Looks very sterile. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Yeah, doing all right this evening.
Are you working from home or do you have to go into an office somewhere?
I work from home. Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, I would have to head down to DC.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I haven't had to do that yet.
Good thing we got fiber in time for you to move here.
It made a difference.
That's what we were telling everybody. Hey, Miriam. Hey, Zoe. Hey, Henry.
Greetings.
And Bob, now that I can see you, thank you for joining us.
Sure. I hope this all works because I'm supposed to be hosting my Conservation Commission meeting now. So today I created a second Zoom account and I'm using my brand new Zoom account, I think, but it's hard to know which one it's really using. But my Conservation Commission will be logging in under my old Zoom account. So
So you're
It's all
hosting it, but
magic.
you're hosting, but not participating, I gather.
right. So I'm hosting it on that account, but I'm just participating on this account. But you can't do both. I'm
Technology.
afraid my Conservation Commission is going to start writing me emails saying, how come I can't get in?
Well, we'll answer for you. So I think we're all here. Did I count right? 1, 2, 3.
Leslie's
4,
not
5, 6,
here.
7. Oh, Leslie's not here. I guess I counted wrong. 1, 2. Yeah. Why don't we
And
give
Marianne isn't here.
that? Well, we can start the meeting without Marianne because she doesn't have to be here immediately. But
Okay.
we'll give Leslie a minute or two. See what. Here she comes. Okay. Cool. Great. Hi, Leslie.
Hey, Michael.
So we're all here. Good to see everybody again. It's I think we'll have a good meeting. It's this is our third one. Welcome back, Miriam.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's all right. You have a very full life these days. So thank you for joining us. And so did everyone get to see the agenda or should I screen share it? Are we good? Does it make sense to everybody? We're good to go?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So before we jump in, I figured we'd just sort of make this a part of the standing routine so Graham is up for minute taking next meeting. And then the opportunity for the meeting after that is for either Leslie or Miriam. So do one of you guys want to do it? Miriam, assuming that you have enough going on that you would rather not taking minutes for now?
I'd rather not do that.
Yeah.
Also, I might not be here, so you never know.
Yeah. Leslie disappeared.
She disappeared.
Hey, there you go.
Good luck.
I'm disappearing when it comes to minutes.
Well, before you go, can we count on you to do minutes after Graham? So not next meeting, but the meeting after?
What's the date on that one?
That's
Don't know
like, if we do it every 2 weeks, it would be May 20. Well, remains to be seen. That would be the week of town meeting, so it might be crazy, but whenever it is. Or we can just, we'll figure it out at the end of the meeting. How's that? We'll figure out what that meeting will
If
be.
I'm here,
Yeah.
I'll do it. But if I'm not here, I won't do it. And I just,
Okay,
not everybody knows that I'm in Boston for the next 6 weeks because my husband's undergoing cancer treatment. So I'm in a fluid situation. So right now I'm here.
okay. Well, if you cannot do it, we totally understand. So that makes sense. So in terms of public comments, is there any public comments that we have? Henry, Bob? Henry, you want to just share with the group what you had told me as to why I asked you to come?
Why am I here?
Yeah,
I don't know. Hi, everybody.
Hey,
Hey, I offered Michael any research support that might be needed. I am interested in questions of energy efficiency, energy use, climate change, mitigation, adaptation, social science background mostly, but nevertheless, very, very current on what's going on. And yeah, so depending on what you're up to, I'm not an official member, obviously, but I'd be happy to help out wherever.
yeah. And I had told Henry maybe as we move forward with the survey and developing that, especially maybe helping Gail and Nate if they're taking the lead on this, but we'll see how it evolves. That makes sense. So we're definitely a little early. How about we'll wait for Mary Ann to show up at 7:15 and maybe just do the minutes if that works for everybody.
Okay.
Okay. So, and thank you both for making the edits just in advance. Greatly appreciated. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes of March 29th, 2022?
So moved.
And Leslie, okay, so Graham moved and Leslie seconded. Any discussion about those? They look good to everybody? Any edits? Okay. Hearing none, because we've gone through a couple of edits. Why don't we just do the roll call? So Nate,
Approved.
great. Gail?
Can we just do unanimous
No, you can't.
acclamation?
We can't, because we're doing it online.
All right.
You can write to Governor Baker.
Yeah.
We're supposed to know who said what.
Okay.
So
We could
Gail,
all,
what-
we could all
It's
indicate,
recording.
we could indicate in one measure, and then it would be,
Now I'll record the names.
yeah, there you go. So, because that's trivially simple, isn't it? And it
Yes.
does save, it's unambiguous, it's recorded, it's in a video,
okay,
and the names get recorded by the minute taker.
okay.
Is that okay
So-
with the chair?
As long as the person who's taking the minutes knows that if someone objects and that we have to write them down separately.
Okay,
So,
why don't we just-
okay, so everyone, all that approved the minutes, give me a thumbs up. Okay,
It does look unanimous, doesn't it?
yes. So there you go, Gail.
I'll name
Everyone said
them.
aye. And thank you for that. And thank you, Zoe, for the last minute tweaks.
Absolutely. Sorry about spelling your name wrong after you
That-
asked me not to.
That's okay. It's the story of my life. It's never going to change. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes of April 12th, 2022? Leslie
moved.
says, okay. Leslie beat you to it. So Gail, you want a second? Okay,
Second.
okay, grab seconds. So we'll do the
And
same
Mary,
thing.
I wasn't there, so I'm abstaining.
Okay, so everybody except Miriam, do we approve the minutes? Give me a thumbs up if you approve. Okay, so everyone says aye and Miriam is abstaining and
Yeah.
no nays. Cool.
You do
Minutes
the
are-
minutes, when you do the minutes, you need to indicate that I abstain.
Yeah, I will do that. And
Yeah.
for the reason. Michael, I have the minutes here. Suppose that I transfer them to PDF and send them into Grace for posting each time.
That, if you want to do that each time, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah.
Terrific. Great.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
That would be good. So why don't we shift gears and maybe we'll just start with Bob, and then when Mary Ann comes, we can welcome her and she can go second, if that makes sense. So I'm not sure if Bob, you want to introduce yourself to the group, or if Gail, you want to introduce Bob since you brought him to us, but we're very happy to have you.
Thank you.
And obviously this is although we're an official committee, I think it's the most informal committee I've been on. So it's a friendly group.
What do you want to do, Gail?
Why don't you tell us why I've asked you, which is to say your experience in municipal aggregation, and go through what it is and the process of getting it there. Be ready to answer any questions.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm a selectman in Conway, and I, for a long time, chaired the climate group in FCCPR, a political group in Greenfield. And that was before the pandemic and for a while during the pandemic, but a lot of those groups kind of fizzled out for a while, and it's in the process of being restarted. But when we first started FCCPR and created the climate change group, we were looking for things we could do that would take advantage of the fact that within FCCPR, we had members in a lot of towns. And because I'm a selectman in Conway, I tended to look at problems as the problems that I felt that I could be influential in, problems that were solved through towns. That there are things that you can do within your town, like become a clean community, a green community, or whatever. And one of those things, and so we sent out surveys to a lot of towns and said, you know, how much electricity do you use, and all kinds of things. And many to energy committees, and many of those energy committees wrote us back and said, what you're doing is great, but we have all of our own projects that we're interested in. And if we ever have any free time, we will come back to you and see if, you know, we could do something that you're suggesting. But a number of towns said, but this issue with aggregation is something that we really don't think we could do as an individual town. And perhaps you could look into whether it would be possible to form an aggregation among multiple towns and provide some leadership there. So we thought, great. So that became, I'll say, my project with a number of other people within FCCPR. And we had people in many towns, and we went to their select boards, and ultimately went to about 15 or 18 select boards within Franklin County, and made pitches for why we thought community aggregation was a good idea. And we also did a lot of our training to learn what community aggregation is all about. And ultimately, we put together a 13-town community aggregation plan. We got 13 towns to all go in and agree to purchase our electricity together. And with that volume of electricity, we then can get bids back from the large vendors that give us cheap pricing. So that's and so I think and now Gail knows that that's where I came from, I assume, and said, gee, if you guys are interested in doing community aggregation, I could share my experience with you.
Cool. So, yeah, Miriam.
Yeah, I just have a general question about community aggregation. I wondered about this, that if you are a homeowner and you have rooftop solar and you're net metering, you're tied to using National Grid or Eversource as your electrical provider, because that's part of your agreement. Isn't that so?
No.
Okay.
It has nothing to, your solar is completely unaffected.
So Bob, can I ask you just in terms of, so it seems like that's partially the what and a little bit of the why. I guess, can you speak more to, from a climate and environmentally friendly approach, how like aggregation is better than just doing what everyone does normally, just to
Sure.
be clear?
So the reason that I like aggregation is that, for one thing, it's really easy to do. Your town has to do some setup and create an aggregation. But after that, you don't have to manage much. It's not like if your town was going to try to build a solar array and then somebody has to manage the solar array, or if your town was going to build a hydro dam and you would then become actually an electric generator. So I like aggregation. It's part of the state law. I have a little short PowerPoint presentation that I gave recently at the Deerfield Energy Symposium, and it might answer some of your questions, or it might
Great.
actually spur some of your questions. But so the reason that I like it, and it's particularly, is because it provides a form of choice that you don't get any other way. People in your town can decide what they're interested in is low cost, or they can decide what they're interested in is more green energy. And they can choose, they can make that choice themselves, and they can change their mind at any time, switch from one to the other. Some people, so anyway,
Yeah. Let me get Graham.
that's mostly why I like it.
Cool. Graham had a question, but then if you wouldn't mind doing the presentation, how long do you think it is?
I can go through it as quick as possible, and if you guys don't ask a million questions, it'd be very quick. And but if you ask questions, that's a good thing. So
Well, we can hold questions till after, but Graham, why don't you do your first
Yeah,
one?
it's a clarification, and it follows on Miriam's question, Bob. And that is, I have net metering. I generate more electricity than I use.
me too. I have solar panels. I do net metering. I generate more.
But if they're giving me a credit, how do I use that credit if I'm not using National Grid electricity? That's that I think Miriam is hitting on that same question. How would I be using?
You
How
build
would
up
I
a credit with National Grid, and if and when you don't make enough, just like now, if and when you don't make enough electricity with your panels, you use that credit to pay your electric bill. And
okay, so whoever
National Grid will still collect all of the, and you pay your bill to National Grid. The difference, if you look at your National Grid, and I'm going to talk about this in my talk.
Okay.
If you look at your National Grid bill, it will say, this is your energy supplier, and it will talk about the energy supply cost, and then it will separately talk about the distribution cost. And the only thing different in your bill that you get from National Grid is your electricity provider will be the Shutesbury aggregation instead of National Grid.
Okay, then if it's working for people who are net metering, then obviously it's working.
Absolutely.
So, okay,
Cool.
very good. Thank you.
I think you can share your screen, Bob.
Okay, hold on now. So let me find.
Miriam, can you hold on the question, or is it important to do before?
No, it's not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your restraint.
Hold on a minute now. I know what I want to share. I have to figure out how to get it. Okay, here we go. I think.
Yes.
So did that work? Okay.
Yeah.
So this was a talk that I gave real quick. Let me just see how quickly I can go through it here. Oh, I didn't want to do that. So one is a pitch. Why do we care about electricity? We use a lot of electricity. It's real, it really is important. We use it in a lot of different ways. Most people don't appreciate that their home heating system uses electricity. Their air conditioners use electricity. Electricity is important. If we can cut the amount of carbon that we put into the atmosphere when we generate electricity, that's good. We're in the process of switching a lot of things to electricity, like electric cars, changing your cooking to an electric range, changing your home to electric heat for your home. So there's going to be a real pressure, especially with whoever the governor is, Governor Baker a little bit, but the next governor a lot, to switch a lot of our energy sources to electricity. And a lot of people poo-poo that because they say, but isn't electricity just all fossil fuels? Right here in New England, less than 50% of our electricity is from fossil fuels. In all of New England, about 60% of our electricity is from fossil fuels. We're doing a little better than the rest of New England, but it's possible to switch our electricity to no fossil fuels. Whereas if we keep burning natural gas and running our cars on gasoline and heating our homes with oil or natural gas, propane, whatever you use, we'll never get there. So it is possible to get there if we can switch everything to electricity. We buy our electricity from our homes. Right today, commonly, you have National Grid buying that electricity on your behalf. Some people generate it through their own solar. And so then what we're talking about is, if you don't make enough to power your home, that additional electricity you use is purchased by National Grid on your behalf. But the National Grid, it just looks like you use a teeny amount of electricity. If you make more electricity with your solar than National Grid, than you use, to National Grid, it looks like you don't use any electricity. So, but a lot of people don't understand like these terms like a kilowatt hour. What's a kilowatt hour? So a watt is 1 amp of current at 1 volt. A kilowatt is 1,000 amps at 1 volt, or 1 amp at 1,000 volts. It's amps times volts is a watt. And a kilowatt hour is 1 kilowatt for an hour. So you might have 10 100-watt light bulbs, that's a kilowatt. And if you burn them for an hour, you've burned 1 kilowatt of electricity. Now, typically our homes use about 500 kilowatts of electricity a month. Some people say 600, but that's on average. ISO New England controls all of the electricity that we use here in all of New England. And it's at the independent system operator, and they're a private government, organization, mostly run by fossil fuel executives. And what they do is they constantly look at the amount of electricity that we are using, and they change on the second by second basis how much electricity we generate to make sure that they match pretty much exactly. So there's 3 ways that we purchase electricity. Your utility can purchase it on your behalf. You can sign a contract with a private competitive supplier, or you can join a town's community aggregation. The private competitive supplier, you probably all get letters from those guys constantly saying, buy your electricity from us, we're cheap, we're clean, something or other. I can tell you that every year, Maura Healey has submitted a bill to our legislator to try to strike down the law that allows private competitive supply, because so many people are being ripped off. And she and all the states that allow competitive supply have not been able to find a way to regulate them so that they're not just a gigantic scam. There may be a couple of companies that do a good job, but in general, they're shameful. And if somebody from the competitive supply comes to you and wants to sell you electricity, don't tell them your National Grid account number, or they probably will sign you up and hope you don't notice.
Wow.
So these are the 3 ways, and the one we're going to talk about is so if your utility supplies it to you, now these are Eversource rates. National Grid rates are usually a little higher. Both Eversource and National Grid go out to bid every 6 months. So they generally have what they call a summer rate and a winter rate. And this is just for the supply side, not on the distribution side. And for the supply side, this is about what Eversource is charging in 2018, 19, on. So right now, Eversource is charging about 13.7 cents per kilowatt hour. So competitive supply, I don't want to talk a lot about competitive supply. Usually they try to talk you into signing a contract. They tell you the price, but it's really the price for the first 6 months of a 2-year contract. And it goes way up after 6 months is over. And I suspect if all of you guys went and looked at your electric bills and you look to see who's providing your electricity, some of you are on competitive supply and you don't even know it.
Wow.
Eversource provide, and so again, this is Eversource, not National Grid. In Conway, we're an Eversource town, so it's based on that. But so you can go to their webpage and you can find who could I buy from who could I buy my electricity from. So this is just right off of Eversource's webpage. And so if you look at the first one, basic service, well, that's if you buy it from Eversource, 13.73 cents per kilowatt hour. And then they have, this is Conway, which one is that? I think this is the Conway 25% extra is 10.2 cents extra green. And then our basic is 9.34 cents. So this 9.34 cents is the same electricity that Eversource sells to us for 13.7 cents. And,
That's
and
your
then there's,
aggregated rate?
these are for our Conway aggregations.
Yeah.
Yes, Eversource actually puts our Conway aggregation right up there. And we have a third one that's 100% green. If you want to buy electricity, it's 100% class 1 renewable, and that's about 13 cents. And it's still less than Eversource at 13.7 for no extra green. But so I just wanted to show that this is an example. There's a web page you can go to, and there's about 30 different providers down here, whoever this town square. So you can get all these prices.
Bob, can you define 100% green?
Sure, although this is going to be a little, everything is going to be a little complicated because often things don't work the way you think. So you have electricity coming into your home right now, provided by National Grid. And if you sign up with competitive supply, or if you have an aggregation and you sign up to have additional extra green, the electricity coming into your home does not change any. There's no way that Eversource can suddenly make different electrons in those wires that are going by your house, get steered down into your house, because those electrons came from a green generator. But the way that we talk about people purchase green electricity is that National Grid, in addition to buying your electricity, they purchase renewable energy certificates from green providers on your behalf that labels your electricity as green. Does that make sense?
Okay, so we're partly paying for the cost of those certificates.
So by you wanting to be buying additional green energy, what you're actually doing is you are directing your generator, you're directing National Grid to purchase energy certificates on your behalf that then sort of labels your electricity as green. So you're spending a little bit more money, and what that money is doing is it's purchasing renewable energy certificates from a renewable energy generator.
So I'm going to break my own rule and ask a question just to follow up on Zoe, because I think just to clarify, and my sense is there's no objective gradation between quote unquote green generation. So, like I'm sure you're keeping up with what's happening in Shutesbury around solar controversy, and you've got your own in Conway. So if one wanted to do a certain kind of solar versus large scale industrial, or you wanted to do less intensive, say hydro, however the third party would classify that as like the gold standard versus the silver standard versus the bronze standard, there's no, right now, green is green. There's no gradation in terms of what kind of
There's no like
package you-
qualitative difference. It's all.
Well, okay. Can I speak to that just a little bit?
Yeah, no, it was a question, because
Okay,
I was thinking.
So there are various kinds of green, although And they're not like this solar versus that solar, but there's class 1 solar and there's class 1 renewables and class 2 renewables. Class 1 renewables are renewable energy that's generated in New England, and that the generators are considered reasonably new. And what reasonably new means is they were built after 1997. So that's not really new, but so there were a lot of hydro plants that were built before 1997. And so they're here in New England, but they're called class 2. They're in New England, so they're allowed to be class 1 or class 2. But if they're built before 1997, they're class 2, and they receive a lower amount of they get less subsidies under the RPS plan.
Okay.
Now,
Can I ask a question?
all solar here in New England, probably all solar is class 1 because it's after 1997. I don't know if anybody has solar panels from before then, but so solar that's here in New England is considered class 1, but solar is considered different, and they get solar renewable energy certificates, not just renewable energy certificates.
Okay, Miriam.
In the
Well,
RPS, go ahead, what?
This was a question, a follow-up to the question I
Yep.
had about if you had rooftop solar and you were net metering.
Yep.
And you had the smart credits.
Yep.
Incentives. The other was that, and I don't remember the name of it, but that program that a lot of us signed up for about 10 years ago in order to help Shutesbury get green community status.
Yep.
where
That has
we-
nothing to do with any of this.
But I remember that there was a restriction that you couldn't sign up for a competitive vendor, a distributor. You had to go through your main, either Eversource or National Grid in order to do that.
That's a
you-
different, yeah, that doesn't have to do with the source though.
But it was a restriction on what you could.
They called it Green Up, and I signed up for it too, and the electricity costs more,
Yeah,
and the extra money was going to renewable generators.
right.
That was
Okay.
called Green Up. I don't know.
Yes. And that's part of what has got us into green community status by
Well-
X% of our population.
Yeah. and we
Bob,
couldn't-
if you didn't have National Grid, it wasn't offered by Eversource.
That may be
Correct.
National Grid, and if Conway's an Eversource town, so I don't know. about
Okay, yeah.
Okay, cool. So we distracted you a bit. You want to keep going?
that. That's okay. So I have to remember where I was.
What else is a renewable
so-
source?
What else is what?
A renewable source. You started with solar.
Okay, well, so solar, and then there's wind, and then there's hydro, and then there's a bunch of other things that are allowed to purchase renewable energy certificates. And we've gone through a big battle right now over whether or not burning biomass to generate electricity, whether that should earn renewable energy certificates. And right now it is allowed, but there's a bunch of laws that are hopefully going to get passed in the new climate bill that's being fought over right now that will not allow it. Now, if you look at where your electricity comes from on National Grid, you can find listings of where it all comes from, and it will list the percentage of green energy that National Grid is buying on your behalf, and it will probably include nuclear in that list. It doesn't earn renewable energy certificates. It doesn't get subsidies like most of the renewables do, but National Grid is trying to make themselves look greener by bragging about how much nuclear energy they're purchasing. And nuclear energy doesn't put any carbon into the atmosphere. So it's not a complete, falsehood. There is right today, most communities are selling their waste, the waste that they collect in their transfer station, to people who burn it. There's almost no there's almost no dumps anymore like we used to have. We don't send it to China anymore. And so most communities are currently actually burning their transfer station waste. And that does also earn a little bit of renewable energy subsidy.
So are RECs and SRECs renewable energy credits?
Yes.
Okay,
Solar renewable energy credits and renewable energy credits. Now,
good, thank
under
you.
the SMART program, they did change a little bit. I don't know the SMART program as well as I might. Probably most of you, if you have solar panels, you have them under the old SREC 1 or SREC 2 program. And so my renewable energy certificates, my solar renewable energy certificates get gathered up, and about 3 or 4 times a year, a broker sells them for me and I get a check.
Yeah, it's different with smart. You're getting.
With SMART, it's different. You still
you're
get a
getting
check,
Directly by you. Yeah, but you're getting paid just directly by the utility, which. is
but then
why
the
I was
utility
wondering-
does all that for you. Yes.
Right, which is why I was wondering whether you could have aggregate aggregation.
Sure. And the utility is just handling it the same as what the broker used to do. Yeah.
Bob, could you talk about your outreach and how you sold this to folks in Conway?
Can I interrupt for a sec? Bob, do you have any more slides?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So,
When you
so
finish
this
those,
is just some more verbiage, and I think that Gail sent these slides to you if you want to read through them in detail. This is just 4 points that are out of the mass.gov webpage about community choice aggregation. And we don't have to read it, but and then so right now there's 13 towns in our aggregation. Here's a listing of those towns: Charlemont, Coleraine, Shelburne, Warwick. One town, Huntington, is not actually in Franklin County, but that's okay. All of our towns aren't all contiguous. It doesn't make any difference. Like New Salem is in the list. They're almost right next door to you guys. So there are a lot of, these are all the towns that are in our current 13 town aggregation. And what we go out to bid. We went out to bid during the pandemic and we got good bids back. We also went out to bid for about six different flavors of electricity. One, meets RPS, means it has no extra green. It meets the renewable portfolio standard. And then RPS puts 5% green, class 1 green, 25% class 1 green, 50% class 1, 100% class 1, and then 100% National Wind, which National Wind is an organization that sells renewable energy certificates to people here in New England. And they're very cheap. And the difference is that they're not class 1 because they're not in New England. And so if you want to help subsidize wind machines in Kansas or Texas, your town could choose to buy National Wind renewable energy certificates. Our aggregation did collectively make one demand of our broker that we have that's in charge of buying the electricity for us, that we didn't want any electricity that was produced from biomass. So we don't have any wood related green flavors of electricity that we purchase. And so then our towns can choose, some number of these, and in general, we tried to keep it at 3 or less. So towns can choose any 3 of these, and those would be the different choices that your town would have. You could have, meets RPS, and in Conway, I have meets RPS, 25% extra green and 100% green. And so people in Conway can choose which of those flavors they want. And as Eversource, and we have a 3-year contract, we have about 1.5 years left on our 3-year contract. And all of our prices are less than what Eversource's current price is right now. But Eversource and National Grid go out to bid every 6 months. And so if at the end of this summer and they go out to bid for another batch of, they'll be coming up soon to the summer price. When they come out with their summer price, it may be cheaper than one of our prices, and so you could change from what flavor you're buying to another one. And if you're unhappy, you can just go back to Eversource. You can say, well, I don't want to buy from the aggregation, I want to buy from National Grid instead, and you could just do that by making a phone call or filling out a form on the web. So this is an example of my bill in a month when I did not make enough electricity to pay my full bill. So I did purchase $24 worth of electricity from Eversource. But if you look at the lower right-hand corner, you will see your electricity supplier is, and it says Dynegy Conway Aggregation. So Dynegy is the big, large generator that we're buying electricity from, and on behalf of the Conway aggregation. So when I see this on my bill, I know that I am purchasing my electricity through the Conway aggregation. So I suspect if a lot of you guys go and look at your bill, some of you probably will be surprised to see it's not National Grid, that you've signed up, maybe, you know, or you were signed up by a competitive supplier. And I hope that's not the case, but I can't stand competitive supply. It's a total fraud. So this was a page I put up in the talk. And so this is if somebody was in one of our towns and they wanted to they chose not to be in our aggregation when it first started, you could just call these telephone number and say, I want to be part of the aggregation, or I want to change what electricity I'm purchasing. So that's my talk.
Cool. Thank you. So who else? Graham, you got a question? Looks like.
Bob, is there much of an administrative cost? It sounds pretty minimal, right?
It's a tenth of a penny per kilowatt hour. It's called a mill. Yeah, but and that's what funds our broker. The broker does all of the work for us.
Yeah, it's very inexpensive. Okay.
Yeah.
So is your broker the same as your aggregator?
What do you mean by our aggregator?
Well, you have SREX, so you have an.
Okay, so no, so my renewable energy certificate aggregator is not the same as our broker.
Okay, so who's the broker? That's not the
Our
provider.
broker is a company called Colonial.
Oh, it's the provider. Oh, okay. Okay, got it.
So
Do you go out to bid for a broker every now and again, or it's just ongoing?
We went out to bid for the broker originally, and like Colonial, and you know, but Greenfield uses a broker called Peregrine. There's another good broker called Good Energy. Good Energy is mostly located in eastern Massachusetts, and unfortunately, the guy at the time who was the Good Energy representative was the chair of the Conway Select Board, so he didn't feel like he should bid. So the best broker that bid on us was Colonial, and we were thrilled they did. And they've been really wonderful working with our 13, you know, somewhat bickering towns. You know, I mean, some of our towns are much more interested in having very cheap electricity, and some of our towns are interested in having a lot of renewables. You know, we go from Charlemont to Deerfield or Conway or whatever. You know, we have very different towns, but it's been really wonderful getting our towns together and talk about what our goals are.
So Bob,
go ahead.
Nate, go ahead, and then I'll ask my question.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask just a little bit about that set of conversations, really, you know, and you're engaging select boards from various towns. Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, you're making a decision for the entire community, right?
Yeah.
So like, could you talk a little bit about, you know, sort of the education process for community members and how, you know, obviously you've given a lot of presentations on this, you know.
So step one of forming an aggregation is education in your town as to what an aggregation is. And then that's going to lead to having to pass in your town meeting a warrant article that your town wishes to form an aggregation. And that's the big step that your, I'll say, select board and your town make, that you want to form an aggregation that then authorizes the select board to operate on behalf of your town, just like they do about many other things, like how you dispose of your municipal waste or whatever, you know. But it's in order to make this happen, your select board has to support, and you have to pass at town meeting a warrant article that your town wants to form an aggregation.
So Bob, picking up on that, I guess I have two questions. One is forming an aggregation essentially agreeing to have a contract to that regard, or is it like when we did because we have muni fibers, we had to create a municipal lighting plant, and that was the whole process in order to do it. So are you creating some kind of municipal or quasi-municipal entity to do aggregation, or is it really just a contract through a broker?
So many towns formed an MLP to join Wired West.
Right.
Right.
So I was in the group that started Wired West. And so,
Oh.
yes, and so Conway actually, we forming an MLP is the same as forming an aggregation.
Like a parallel, or like you can run the aggregation through the MLP?
That's right.
Wait,
Huh.
what's right?
Yes.
You can run the aggregations.
By
through them.
by your town having, and now your MLP is getting kind of old, but we checked with the DPU, and they said yes, all the towns that formed MLPs, but this was all 5 or 6 years ago. All the towns that formed MLPs, that's the same as forming an aggregation.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, our MLP is active. Graham's on it.
Yeah, but Bob, a town that hadn't formed an MLP, they could also they currently go with your aggregation, right? I mean, some towns.
Okay, well, let's start. A different issue is whether they're going to go with our aggregation. Every town has its own aggregation. So we have 13 towns. Each town has their own individual aggregation, and there's certain decisions within their town they can make on behalf of their town, like what flavors of energy they're going to provide for the offer to the people in their town. But what they all have agreed to is we will all go out to bid for our electricity together. And it's exactly the way FERCog works. I don't know if you do your municipal, waste through FERCog. You authorize FERCog to go out to bid for getting rid of your municipal waste.
Mhm.
Each of your
Right.
towns has your own transfer station, probably, and it's maybe run by your board of health, or you may be run by your select board. But each of your towns collects its waste. Although maybe in Shutesbury you just have private haulers. I don't.
Yeah. We have used leverage transfer
Okay,
station.
you
for
can do
extra.
that, but many
Yeah.
towns have. It's a municipal service.
Right. So Bob, the other thing my second question, and it actually refers to the Wired West example, is I was in a lot of those like mind-numbing conversations about how do you organize this thing?
Yeah.
And there was the board construct where every town had a representative. And so if we could do our own, it sounds like, but if we were to join an existing one, whether it was yours or the emerging, Amherst, Pelham, Northampton one, is it a matter of, Shutesbury basically getting representative and being on some kind of body? FERCog's a nonprofit. We all have our representatives in FERCog. So is it
Our aggregation, we don't have a formal body. When we needed to make decisions, the select board authorized somebody that they could come to a meeting, and we maybe had 4 or 5 meetings where we had to talk about things like, and I'll say the biggest one was each town buys electricity a little bit different. Each town's electric profile is a little different than another town. Some towns have more industry, and so their profile might be that they buy a lot more industry during the day, whereas Shutesbury might use a bunch of electricity between about 6 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock in the morning when everybody wakes up and takes a shower and goes to work. And then you don't use much electricity until 4 o'clock when people come home from work and they cook dinner and they wash their clothes and whatever, and they use electricity. And so every town has an electric profile that's a little different. And that drives the cost of your electricity. And we could have had each of our towns have a different electric price based upon our profile. Or we could have said, we're going to treat all of our towns as a big group. We're not going to differentiate our towns, and we're going to have one price common across all of our 13 towns.
Cool.
And-
Nate, you had another question?
But so that was an example of a decision that we had to make as a body.
Got it. That's helpful.
But within each town, each town could have a different 3-level choice, right?
That's
Yeah.
right. We went out to bid for on the bid that we got, we went out for bid about 6 different flavors of electricity.
Oh,
And then each town could choose which flavors they wanted to offer the people in their town.
Got it.
Cool. Nate?
Yeah, thanks. I lowered my hand instead of unmuting, so yeah. I did have a quick question, I think, about there's an aggregation contract that has a fixed time frame associated with it, right? And that's part of how you fix your rates and make them stable over time. And then within
We
communities,
go out for bid and the bid has a time frame. Yes.
yeah, so individuals within communities, they can drop out or hop on or shift laterally, if you will. But how would another community join your sort of umbrella of communities? Like
That's a great question. I think we would have to sort of ask the select boards in our 13 towns to appoint somebody to come to one of these group meetings where we're all going to talk about it. And then people are going to say, do we want to allow new towns to come in? It's not a formal thing. I've talked to Colonial about this, and it's fine with Colonial for you to join our aggregation. But I don't want to make it sound like it's easy. So I said, you have to do this thing in the town meeting. Then there's a whole bunch of paperwork you have to fill out on behalf of the DPU. That's mostly handled by the broker, but in other words, your town, but occasionally your town will get paperwork from the DPU that it has to fill out, like how many Spanish people do you have in town and whatever, they want to make sure there's a lot of justice kind of issues that your town is doing okay. And ultimately the DPU has to approve your aggregation. And it took us 1.5 years to get our aggregation approved. And there was nothing we could do to speed that up. And I don't know if that was Governor Baker's DPU, and under a new governor's DPU, it might be faster. I don't know, but it really did take just about 1.5 years for us to go from everything else we had to do, sending in the paperwork, waiting 1.5 years. It was very frustrating.
Okay. So just being cognizant of time, we have like 10 minutes to stay on the track. So Graham, do you want to go?
Yeah, Bob, just it'll give me a sense of, or give us a sense of how popular it is. How many people opt out on average, just ballpark?
Right now, there's probably about almost 90% of Conway that's in the aggregation. Some towns, one town had somebody who went door to door pitching that nobody should join the aggregation. That was Gill, the town of Gill. I don't know why. And so Gill was down at about a little over 80% of their town is in the aggregation.
Okay. Okay. So it's very popular. There's
now,
about right
there were people in our town that got up, that pitched against it. And the common pitch was, this is un-American. You should not be automatically transferred from your utility into the aggregation. When the aggregation gets formed, I should only be transferred if I volunteer to do it. And when the aggregation gets formed, everybody that's currently buying from the utility, like National Grid, would get a postcard that says, if you don't want to be part of the aggregation, please return this postcard. And people thought that was egregious. And so my pitch now to all of those people is, we're in the aggregation for 1 year. Now it is truly your choice. You're not in the aggregation, but if you want to save 5 cents on every kilowatt hour of electricity you buy, do you want to join the aggregation? And it's been a good pitch, and some people have joined.
Henry and then Gail.
Okay, yeah, just a quick question about whether you did some kind of survey to begin with to see how much electricity was being used in the communities, and whether that's an ongoing project, particularly as we want to conserve energy as well as, find cheaper ways to access energy.
We don't have a survey, and actually we can't get from Eversource the amount of electricity people in our town are using. Eversource hides that. We did send out a survey within Conway where we asked people a bunch of questions, and the most important question was, what would your most important issue be of what you would look for in an aggregation? And about almost everyone in Conway, I would say 75–80% of Conway, wrote back and they said, we would like to buy more green energy and not have it cost more than utility. That was the goal of the people of Conway. And so that's why when people get moved from Eversource into the aggregation, they move into that national meets RPS plus 25%, because that price is just a little bit less than Eversource's no extra green. So they're getting 25% more green than the law requires, and the price is low, slightly lower than Eversource.
Gail and then Leslie.
I want to go back to what you said about the MLP, the municipal light plant, because ours is strictly broadband. Is that still construed as an aggregation in terms of electricity source?
Yes, it's a municipal light plant, but in your town passing that, it's your town passing that the people of your town would like to have your select board manage something like that. And that's what the DPU is looking for.
And we can insert electricity as in addition to the broadband in that management without going through these separate steps of aggregation?
You would have to, that would mean you would not have to pass a warrant article in town meeting. That one step you would not have to do if you have an MLP. And you should verify that with the DPU, or if you're interested in joining our aggregation, you should be talking to Colonial. And Mark Capadona would have been more than happy to be on this call, but it just seemed like a lot of the questions I could answer. But Mark Capadona is the guy who's the president of Colonial Power, and he could research that for you.
Okay.
Hey, Leslie, I'm going to have Graham just jump in on whatever MLP thing he's going to say.
It just sounds like a checkbox that the DPU wants you to have done an MLP. It doesn't mean that the MLP, the broadband MLP, is actually going to do anything in relation to making decisions.
Conway formed an MLP, but we never did anything with it.
There you go.
The MLPs were created so that we could create a group of MLPs working together to run our own wire, our fiber optic line.
Okay, yeah.
Leslie?
Thank you. So I'm trying to understand, it's basically like a buying club, the aggregates, like you're
Yeah.
a big buying groups, and you get to get your best possible price, but the towns don't own it.
There's nothing to own. Own what?
Well,
I mean, we don't build any infrastructure or anything like that. Now,
No,
I
I
can
mean-
tell you that originally Amherst and Northampton and Pelham were interested in building a different kind of aggregation in which they would charge extra money to the people in their town and take that extra money and build some truly renewable generation.
Mhm.
And I think that they were unable to have that fly. But I know that would not have flown in our mix of 13 towns. I never could have gotten some of our very conservative, very small select boards to have been willing to say, sure, we'll charge everybody in our town extra money and we'll give that money to this aggregation, whoever it is, and have them spend it on building solar somewhere within, one of our towns.
Do you know?
I guess my question really was, versus community solar, where the town would own it. After a bunch of years, they would own it, whereas the aggregate.
And I love it. Build community solar, and build, there's a number of flavors of community solar. Some of it is community solar that's mutually owned by all the people who put money in. I don't think any of those have actually been built here in Franklin County or in Western Mass yet, but there's the community solar where there's a company like Nexamp that builds a community solar array, or the people who are probably going to be building the solar arrays in Shutesbury, although I don't know that.
No, Bob. Nexamp is not community solar. It's wannabe community solar, but I'm talking about
Municipally
community
owned.
solar like
So then
like
there's
the
municipally
East
owned
Hampton River
solar.
Valley Co-op did.
The co-op, yeah.
Yeah, where the co-op did. Nexamp and the industrial solar in Shutesbury is as far from community solar as it gets.
Okay, but no, Nexamp sells their electricity under the community solar umbrella that allows them to get a little bit more in the way of subsidies from the state.
Yeah.
And so in other words,
well,
people are
that's true,
buying,
but that
people
was,
can,
but that is just false advertising, because the people that I know that bought into Nexamp are looking to get out based on what happened with the disaster in Conway. So
there was no disaster in Conway.
You don't know about the people where Nextamp built the solar array?
I'm a
and they were all
selectman in
sick?
Conway. I talk to those people every day. Please
Um,
come to Conway and look at what Nexamp built. Yes, there's 2 neighbors that live right next to the solar panels that act like their life has been ruined. But
Well,
if you were to drive by the solar project in Conway, you would not see it. If I told you how to get to it, you would drive by and you would say, I must have missed it.
well, I mean, that seems to be what AMP and Nextamp do. If we can't see it, it must be good. But I know 2 of those people really well, and the health hazards that they endured was not pretty.
Oh, let's not go down that path.
We
for
won't
this
go there.
discussion.
I'm just
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to.
I
I'm
can
just
tell you,
trying to define
that's
community
absolutely
solar.
wrong. And it's a shame that all of those rumors get out there.
No, well, let's not argue about that.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
not a rumor. If you talk to those people, you won't find rumors. But anyway, I'll leave it
Okay.
at that. I
Cool.
just want community solar to be well represented. And I'm not sure where Mary Ann is. I just called her and
Yeah, I think we'll
All of
schedule
this
her.
has nothing to do with community solar. You know,
Yeah.
this has to do with the way that your town is purchasing electricity.
no, I understand that. It's like a buying club and you get great prices.
Yeah, it's a great description.
And choice. I mean, to me, I love the choice that the people in town who are really low income, they can choose and feel okay about choosing the cheapest electricity we have. People in our town who are less low income can say, I want to support more green, and they can do that. And they can switch back and forth on a daily basis if they want. There's no contract. There's no cost to switch from one kind to another.
Cool. Well, we're exactly on time agenda wise. So Bob,
Great.
I want to thank you. This is fantastic information. And I think you're going to kick off a lot of discussion in terms of what our
I'm
next
thrilled
steps
you
are.
guys want to form an aggregation. It's by far the easy. It's way easier than building municipal solar. We tried to build municipal solar in Conway and we're never able to make it happen. And it's devastating to the town. But
We might circle back and have a conversation about how that worked for you later, but because that's
didn't
another
work.
topic. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The lessons
Yeah.
learned.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank
Okay.
you so much.
nice to see you guys.
Okay. Have a
Thanks,
good night.
Bob.
Bye, thank you.
So,
Thank you. Bye.
well, that was good. Let me ask you, so it's at 8 o'clock and we were gonna shift gears to the survey, but do we want to spend like 5 or so minutes just sort of like debriefing a little bit of people's initial
Yeah.
impressions?
Sure.
Okay.
I liked it. I like the idea of it. I do think that I'm not sure what he's correct about it not having an impact on people who've entered into the SMART program. That SMART program may be have contractual obligations with National Grid or Eversource. It's a different program than the SREX program.
Okay.
And I would
Leslie?
think that would be a deal killer for folks who have rooftop solar,
Yeah.
if it was an issue.
Leslie and then Graham.
Yeah, I did get some information from Mary Ann about the differences between community solar and the aggregates. I thought she would be here tonight. I called her, I emailed her.
Yeah,
Today.
we'll schedule
But
for next
anyway,
meeting.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't have a good feeling about the Nextamp project based on actually a dear friend of mine and all of her neighbors. So I'm a little mistrusting or something. He painted a really big picture, and it is a buying club, which I think is great if that's what we're looking for as, getting the best price. Again, for me, I always think the best thing to do is to use less, not to get the best price on too much of something. But that's just me, but I am open, if that's where we go, it's better than what we have now, for sure.
Cool. Graham?
Yeah. The wonderful thing I think would be that whatever electricity, even if we make it very, very minimal, every kilowatt hour we buy will be contributing to more green energy. So therefore it just moves whoever in town wants to opt for the higher green, for greener electricity, it allows them to contribute and support that, and that's a wonderful thing. I don't think there'd be too many people in Smart yet, because most of us are all SREC 1 or SREC 2, and Smart is more recent. So there may be, if it turns out that Smart is a problem, it still might not many would need to opt out. But if they need to opt out, that's fine. It sounds like 90% of the town will still be in it. So
Yeah. Zoe? Oh, so are you frozen? Or look, just, yes, she is. At least for me. Is she frozen for you guys?
Yep.
Okay, bummer. Well, once she pops back in or starts moving, we'll ask.
Breathe, breathe, Zoe. Blink your eye.
It's such a weird, it's a weird thing. And the one thing, okay, let's see. Hey, Zoe, are you there? Nope.
So if you can hear us, turn off your camera and maybe we'll just hear your audio.
No, she did.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
You're right. So the one thing that I was thinking about this is that, and it gets to what Zoe's question was about, like, how do you determine renewable and green? That you could, depending on what kind of package you have, you're in the big picture, you could be steering more, green, however we want to define that generation, because you're putting money in and therefore you're forcing the market, not that Shutesbury is going to shift the market, but collectively, the idea is if you said we want X kind of generation and people are looking to buy it, then they're going to prioritize that or build more of it. So, it's sort of a direct, indirect kind of thing. That was good. I think just business wise, Leslie, if you want to check in with Marianne and see if we can schedule her for the next meeting, that would be good. And then in some regards, having one presentation per meeting is probably much better because we're able to get more into the weeds.
That's
It's
confusing.
always perfect, and I'll be happy to follow up with Marianne.
Great, cool. So I'm assuming Zoe's going to pop in, but let me just,
There she is.
perfect timing. Yay, you're back. We were waiting for your question, but you're muted.
I'm muted.
There you go.
Okay, yeah. My internet's been cutting out all night, so I might have missed information that this question might have already been answered, but I just don't really understand what the green, like getting 25% more green, 50% more green, what that means. I didn't understand his answer to that either.
Anyone want to try to respond?
The state requires, the state currently requires every power supplier to have some amount of renewable in them at this point. I think, what is it, 20% or something of that order. But you can exceed that if you want. But and that would be by going with what do you call them, the private suppliers. But that's a risky way to go because of the track record that they have. So therefore, the energy broker gets someone who is producing.
A question for me directly. Do you have is it important? Yeah, I am. Okay.
So you can exceed what the rate is required and you can go to 100% renewable. And the thing
Are we all talking about solar?
Well, no, renewable as three possibilities: wind,
Hydro.
Yeah,
hydro and solar.
Wind, solar.
So it would be a mix, and it might be a mix we have no control of. But it's better, I figure, it's better to buy renewable than it is to just buy hydrocarbon-based carbon-based fuels, which is what the regular electricity that you can get from National Grid is right now.
Yeah.
If you're having an internet problem in Shutesbury, you should get in contact with me, because if you've got intermittent something going on there, as the other hat I'm wearing, the MLP broadband. I want to hear what your problem is. So we can talk offline. On
He'll
that
do a
one.
home visit and fix your problem.
I do home visits sometimes.
I could use your help too, Graham. I'll get in touch.
Oh yeah, well, you have to. Yeah. It has, but not on this channel
Not
here.
yet.
So,
Thank
yeah.
you. Good to
So
know
Gail-
you're the guy.
Yeah, Gail, why don't you
I-
ask your question and then we'll shift gears.
I think wasn't Bob's point is that electricity is electricity, and what comes in your house is different only in where the provider buys it. What is the source of the electricity that the buyer provides in her network? Isn't that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so if the broker or the provider is buying from coal-produced electricity, or buying from solar-produced electricity, or buying from wind electricity, it's his sales volume, purchase volume that makes the difference. Is that correct?
The
It's-
aggregator, I would say,
Yeah.
is getting the buying club going. Yeah, and
Yeah.
therefore quantity.
Okay.
Nate, did you want to chime in before we switch gears? Okay. Leslie, you got the last word.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to kind of look at where the solar comes from as green and renewable, because coming from Next Amp is like the same amp that's trying to destroy the forest in Shutesbury. So I would not consider that renewable. I do consider solar renewable, absolutely, but I think, that's something that some of the industrial solar companies are trying to, as we all know, trying to make themselves look green, but they're not. When you clear cut the forest, that's not green.
Yeah.
That's my
Yeah.
last word.
Yeah, and I would just say in wrapping up, I mean, it's what I think Zoe was trying to get at earlier, that, if they can say, we don't want to buy any biomass, if we were to go this route, we could have a conversation to say, what kind of X do we want? So in this case, what
Right.
kind of solar do we want?
That's
That's a
right.
whole conversation.
Yeah.
So we pick our ingredients essentially. So,
Yeah.
so why don't we'll move on? But I think clearly we learned a lot. So
Yeah.
I'm getting a sense that our knowledge base is like creeping up. Like we're going to actually, the next few months, know a lot. So shifting gears to the survey, which Gail has dutifully developed and shared with us. And I think, I don't know if Gail and Nate have explicitly worked together on the survey, but Gail, do you want to sort of kick it off, and then we use the opportunity for our open meeting to sort of have a conversation and give feedback and figure out where we want to go?
Okay. Well, Nate and I did work together at the beginning before his presentation. His presentation was of state and county data, and raised the issue that, getting what do you call granular or local data is not as simple. So you've got census information, you've got government information, all that kind of stuff out there for the larger picture. A little more difficult for things in town, and that then leads to a distinction between municipal use and residential use if we're looking at fuels, because the municipal use is all documented and can be obtained online. There is an automatic report, for instance, from National Grid to DOER program Mass Energy Insight, which stores all these records. So we can get online and see for building specific, town hall, fire department, library, school, what was the use of electricity, oil, gas, in any month of the, I mean, the records are there from many, many years ago. That is not easily obtainable for residents, which is why my answer then to that question that was posed at the last meeting was, then how about I write a survey or draft a survey to see if we can't get some of those data on uses. It won't be complete because not everybody in town is going to answer, but we'll get at least a pulse of willing respondents. And then various people chimed in and added this and added that, so that you saw what's online now. And it works very well in a Google form, which would be postable online and also mailable. So we could use, for instance, the town announcement to get a broadcast, put it on the line on our webpage to get a broadcast. And it captures all responses into a spreadsheet. So we'd have a literal database on all those responses. And the responses are quite specific. So it's not opinions. This is called, what is the number here? What was the year here? So asking about the years, for instance, of solar, Miriam, there'd be some way to correlate the year in which you had it installed and what incentives may have been present or not at state or federal levels. And then you could also research and see what are the ramifications in terms of SMART for if it was installed in such and such a year, or if it was an SREX installed in 2012 or
Like
2013.
having an item saying, you know, do you participate in the SREX 1, 2, or SMART program?
But-
Just because then we don't have to go hunting for it.
Okay, in addition to the year, you mean?
Yeah, because I think there was a turnover, a transition year, and I'm not really sure. I mean, unless we know, I don't know.
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
So specifically, are you an SREX 1, SREX 2, or SMART?
Were there only 2 SRECs, I think, programs?
Yeah,
There
one and
were
two.
only two
two
SRECs,
and
but a
two
lot of people
smart.
wouldn't know. A lot of people wouldn't know. Well, I barely know that I'm SREC
Okay,
one.
well, as a
But they
SREC,
know SREX versus SMART.
yeah, I think they would.
Yeah.
That would be big. Yeah.
Okay.
So does anyone else have any thoughts about the survey, the feedback or suggestions?
I liked, it was easy. It was good, I thought.
Another alternative, maybe an ulterior motive, for one thing, is very specific answers, but easy answers, so that you can go through it quickly, which is to say, this is our first addressing of our residents from this committee. So it's like, okay, this is easy to do. We're responsive. We want to know your engagement in these issues. So it's an introduction of the committee to the town, so that when we get around to asking opinions or trends or questions, we will have laid a base of, we want to pay attention, we want to, and we will report the answers when we get them, so that is to inform the people of the town as well as ask questions of people in the town.
So I had a different take on it, which I is worth sharing, because my sense was, we've had some surveys in town over the course of, years, but there's not a lot. And my thinking, which is different, Gail, from what you just articulated, and I could go either way, I guess, but I was assuming we'd have one shot to sort of send out a survey from the committee saying, here's things we want to know from you, maybe 2 shots. So rather than thinking of frequent small ones where you might get less response over time, if we can, any kind of survey has to sort of be able to move quickly through it. Otherwise you lose people, halfway through and it drops off. So the things that I was thinking about, one is just asking the question, are there things that we need to know versus want to know? And there was I think there was something in the one that sent out that just seemed like, do we really need to know this? I forget what it was. I'm just looking now. But the other part was, whether we do it now or later, it seems like there's a whole category of things we want to ask about that are not about fuel, that are about behaviors and preferences, so,
Okay.
There's, in the categories I was thinking, there's home use, which, there's fuel, there's maybe exploring conservation options, transportation, there's things like carpooling and biking, and there's charging stations and, a whole bunch of stuff. And then there's, we're not ready to offer anything, but the whole idea of gauging interest in, community-owned solar, community solar aggregation. At some point, we're going to want to get a pulse of like where people are at. So I guess what I'm thinking is it'd be good to sort of discuss this amongst ourselves, like what's our strategy for getting a sense from the community. And we could either do it in little bite-sized things as Gail's doing it, or you can try to figure out, is there a way of doing something that's bigger and more comprehensive, but also the people will complete. And both have their pros and cons, obviously. But I think no matter what we do, we're going to want to ask people their opinions about behaviors and preferences beyond just fuel. So,
Why do you think we're limited to 2 surveys?
because I think people start getting desensitized and they don't respond. It's sort of like, Yeah.
I thought there would be a training feel to it. And in fact, if a survey says this will only take you 2.5 minutes to fill in on average, then I'm there. It's when you get a survey and you think, oh my God, I'm gonna. But I think that I agree that there are the spots where we can find interest. It should be a short survey, and then the interest thing is. Are you thinking about getting an electric car? Yes, no, maybe, to find out how many maybes there are and how many yeses. And then the other one is to ask them, are you thinking about changing your heating system? Yes, no, maybe. It'll tell us if it's a short survey, we'll get a good response, or we're more likely to get a good response.
Oh, can I interrupt? I found,
Yeah.
So the question that I was suggesting we don't ask, just as an example, is the one about buying an electric vehicle. Because I think it has to come back to what can we do? And so the town can't incentivize or subsidize purchase of electric vehicles. Like there's nothing we can do about that. So the only thing that would happen is if people are getting them, we could create infrastructure to support them. But it's different in some ways than understanding their current usage. So that would,
we might put in charging stations somewhere, Michael. So therefore, the town would have an interest potentially in that, surely.
but we could probably ask that more directly then. Just say if there were
No,
charging stations.
If we know no one is thinking about getting an electric car, then why would you waste your money doing a charging station? So to get a sense of the town, that's pretty good. And if it can get sent out electronically, then it'll be a lot. There'll be a better turnout, and So
Oh, it definitely should be electronic. Well, we should definitely send it out electronically. But having been through lots of conversations and lots of committees, we also have to do an offline version somehow and make it available at town hall or the library.
Got to be
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. Nate?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little more challenging from a sort of database management point of view, but we might include a free text section, just asking the community what sorts of issues they might like us to spend some time working on. So there may be areas of work that the 7 of us haven't even really thought about, that there might be some consensus or emerging ideas, good ideas that we might elicit through this vehicle.
Yeah. Gail?
And instead of just that open-ended comment at the end, what do you think about this thing? Ask that specifically. Okay, you've been through this, you've given the answers this. At that point, why didn't you ask about such and such, or why didn't you ask about so-and-so? But ask specifically the way you just did. What other topics should we be interested in, or what other, how would you say it?
I think you said issues are,
Opportunities.
Yeah, I would probably.
What other
wordsmith it
issues
a
should
little
we
bit.
be looking into?
Mhm.
Should we
Something like
address?
Or other concerns people have, related to energy.
That the
Any other-
committee should address? Make it that explicit?
Well, just ask for any other questions or comments. You know, some people may have things and some people may not even know what to ask. It's a first go round.
Yeah.
So Gail, you were suggesting doing this in Google Forms. Is that what I heard?
Yep.
So I wonder if it would make sense if you took it and put it into Google Forms and then sent it out to all of us to
Sure.
complete. And then next meeting, we can all sort of say this work, like there's might be little, we should
Excellent.
test it.
There's something that is so cool in Google Forms. So there are a couple of yes, no questions. And for the yeses, there are follow-ups. So do you have solar? Yes or no? Then the next bunch of questions is it roof mounted? Is it ground mounted? Blah, blah. But if you answer no, the form skips those succeeding questions and moves to the next question, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Print it out, it's all there. So you've got to go through the whole thing, but electronically, it's really nifty.
So one thought I have jumping ahead, like as opposed to the substance of what's in it, just in terms of implementation. If we are thinking that we'll do this small bite-sized one now and then, come up with another one, a way that we could maybe approach the hard copy version and also sort of increase awareness is to, if we get our act together, make the hard copies available for town meeting.
Yep.
So we can distribute, because even some people who would do it online, if it's right in front of their face, they might actually do it. So we can do both, and then we can follow up. And I think the timing would work. We could put it out before town meeting, make it available at town meeting, and then somewhere in June, look at the results.
And it can be emailed, so it could go out with town announcement. We could post it on our webpage. We could make a plea on the homepage for people to be aware of it.
That's right. But if people don't know, Gail's on the web committee. She's got an inside track.
Gail, will it manage it so that a single address is a single entry, as opposed to if my wife sees the thing and does it and I do it,
Yes.
You can set it up either way.
The name and address are both required.
the address. Okay, that'll do it.
And so they'll appear in the spreadsheet as separate items, so somebody can't do it twice.
Okay, yeah.
Well, you could, I mean, my sense is you're talking about the street address, right, Gail?
Oh, but what you're getting at though, Graham, is
Yeah.
do
You
you
don't
and
want
your
two,
wife
you don't want
have-
two from my house, yeah, but if
Right.
the address will block the next person doing it on my address.
Not
I
that,
don't-
but it'll show up as a duplicate address in the database.
Yeah, okay.
That's fine.
I
We can
guess,
sort it,
yeah.
we can sort it by address.
You can
That's-
sort it out. Yeah, you're right.
Right. Yeah, it's email is a unique identifier for Google. So, okay. Well, does that sound like a plan then? So between now and then, we'll all look for Gail's email and fill out the form, and then we can.
Henry, I need your email address, please.
I'll send it to you, Gail.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you were CC'd on Michael's. I got it.
Okay, cool, great. Well, Gail, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. It's people will know that we're alive as a committee, so that's sort of cool.
Yeah. Action.
But let's encourage them at our meeting to go and do it electronically, because they'll be collating if we get a stack of paper. So
But
That's true.
I would hope that we'd get this broadcast well before town meeting,
that's excellent.
so that,
Of course we could, yes.
Yeah.
Henry.
They could do it on their phone while they're at town meeting.
Absolutely.
there you
Very
go.
cool. Yeah. Instead of a pee break, they can do a survey filling out break.
The form shows up on an iPhone, iPad, laptop, and PC. We've successfully. Yeah, so you're right, Leslie. That's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
I did
Henry,
it
you had
on-
a question?
Yeah, just wondering if you could summarize in brief what the purpose of the survey is.
To get the data of residential use of various fuels in town. So for home heating, cars, do you or do you not have solar? And Nate suggested adding a question specifically about aggregation. Get the notion out there.
Okay.
Is there any, I'm just curious before we move on, is there any way of asking something about conservation? I don't know what the question would be, but it seems like that's another area we want to, to the
Conser-
same
Conservation of what?
Energy.
of energy usage.
Mhm. Yeah,
So, I mean, it's sort of like what, Leslie was bringing up earlier, that you, in the aggregation thing, you can keep buying more energy, but part of the solution is conserving. And I don't know what quite the question would be, but it'd be interesting to explore that.
Is there any way for us to get data from Mass Save about how many people have done the home energy audit?
They were at my house today.
That was
Knocking
exactly
on my
my
door.
suggestion.
Twice. I did it twice this spring.
Yeah.
They
So Nate,
sent
what
one
was,
person.
right.
But that would be interesting to know.
Yeah,
so Nate, you were suggesting adding a question about, did you use Mass Save?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's it gets to that that use of the survey as a prompt for people, and you know how surveys can be. Mass Save is a program that can save you energy for a low cost through insulation and yada yada yada. And have you done that?
You're in marketing, right?
Yada, yada,
That
yada.
was very slick. I like that.
but that's interesting because that could be a whole section after we ask about solar installations. Mass Save would be one. Nate, could you tool some questions along that line?
Yeah, I'm happy to, and I'll try to wordsmith that that open-ended question that we discussed as well.
Excellent, excellent. And shoot that to me and then I'll send it out to everybody.
Cool. Leslie, you wanted to add something?
Question.
Yes.
Oh.
I always looked at the survey
Wait.
as a,
Wait, before we
Sorry.
move on from the Mass Save thing, because
Yeah. Go ahead, Miriam.
which is it'd be good to know if people have had the audit. It might even be good to know how recently, because as I learned, I had an audit 4 years ago, but now they've changed their standards and now I had to get another $2,000 worth of stuff done.
Oh, wow.
But they
Yes,
paid for
yeah.
75% of it, so that was cool, but I assumed I was just fine and that Mass Save couldn't offer me anything because I did it 4 years ago and I was wrong.
wow, wow, that's interesting. Because
Yeah.
every time they've come, they're just offering me light bulbs. They go through the whole house. So
No,
I'm,
they-
I'm
I
curious,
thought-
like
I thought I
what?
was all good and they said, no, we're
Wow.
gonna go do all this stuff up in your attic.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
Cool.
Yeah.
So Leslie, what you want to say?
Well, initially I thought of the survey as an educational tool, like to also educate people where they're using fossil fuels, like how much polyester they're wearing, cleaning products, the kind of your personal care kinds of regimens. And that may be a whole nother program, that's, bedding and towels, laundry detergents, et cetera. Because I don't think people understand the ramifications of everything they bring into their home.
I would think that's probably a subsequent conversation. I mean,
Oh,
I guess,
totally.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean, I do think it ties back to like what's from a town perspective. How can we motivate people? And there's lower hanging fruit than not, I guess is.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, what I'm talking about is advanced, but I mean, it's kind of, those are important details for me in the work that I do. But I always think of it as an educator, like, how can we let people know? A lot of people are like, well, everything should move to electric. And there are other ways to lessen our carbon footprint. And
Yeah.
that may be a program for the library or something else, I don't know, but it just kind of lets people know, like, oh, they're wearing a polyester sweater when it's cold, etc.
Good, Henry.
Yeah, I agree with what was said earlier, Nate and Gail. The data on county and municipal level is pretty much nil. You can't find any energy use data. There's statewide use, and but an interesting model is Cambridge, the city of Cambridge. I don't know if you looked at what they've done there. as far as inventorying, essentially their carbon footprint. And they look at not only all energy use, but also land use. So what are people doing with the land itself? You know, agriculture, forestry, etc. So it's pretty comprehensive inventory, and it turns out that that inventory is part of a protocol that's global. Actually, it's a global inventory for cities, adopted by cities worldwide. I'll send the links to that to
Great.
share with you.
That would be great. Thank you, Henry.
Yeah.
And, the one thing I was going to say, and then we could sort of shift gears, was when I was thinking about the survey, and I guess I'm, convinced that we can do subsequent ones over the course of time, but I think tying it to some of the topics that are in our charge. So like, as Henry was saying, like there's land use, there's water, there's solid waste, there's infrastructure that, if we do these little bite-sized things over the course of time, we can probably hit a bunch of those in terms of understanding, and some of it might not be personal use, but it could be like preferences or whatever. But
Right.
I think getting to all of that variety of, there's agriculture and there's forestry and there's open space. The other thing I was just going to mention, which just to throw out there for another discussion, when we get to thinking about how to deal with other committees, it seems like it might be helpful to have a survey that we send to the committees because, in my experience, it's really hard to get committees to a meeting. Like even when I was on the select board, we'd have an all-town meeting and 20 people would show up, of the many that could. But if we survey the committees, a lot of these other topics we could incorporate in there because it won't be personal usage, but like open space committee can talk about open space and, the farming and agriculture folks can talk about agriculture. So just a thought that we can use surveys in different ways to sort of gather different information from different audiences. So, Gail.
But I'll go back to your first point, it's more than just gathering information for information's sake. If the committee has a charge, I think these questions should be related to the charge and we're wanting information as a base to move in certain directions, given our charge and given the current.
Yeah, no, I exactly. I think that would be the leading thing. In fact, we could even maybe in this survey open, start out with like, what's our charge and why do we exist? Because most people probably don't know.
That's the first, there's a statement at the head of the survey.
Let me see. Oh, hold on. I apologize. I have to go back up to it. Okay, cool.
Who we are and why.
Yeah. So let's see. Should we shift gears to updates and then?
Just one last thing.
Yeah.
Was there going to be something on aggregation? Because if that might be a little tricky because, until this meeting, I had no idea whether I wanted to aggregate. Is that something that is that wise to, it's an educational piece. It needs a flyer all by itself. We need a program to tell people about that, I think,
Right.
rather than slow them up on a or stop them doing a survey because they don't know what it is. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, I think we don't want to be offering solutions until we're ready to offer solutions, or at least have discussed it more fully.
Yeah.
So it's a good point. So in terms of updates, Gail's got one about complete streets, and I've got some stuff to share. But Gail, do you want to just share that?
Yeah, I went to. There's a series of 5 bi-weekly meetings offered by FERCog and other agencies and our senators and representatives on funding opportunities on various topics. And each of these meetings has been a different topic. The topic today included complete streets, and MassDOT gave a very good program description of what's available and how to go about it and what would be included and so on. So I took screenshots of the slides and sent them to the planning board since Complete Streets is one of their babies.
Yeah, it actually isn't necessarily a planning board. Like I did the Complete Streets application process, but sort of as a planning board member, but really because the select board had to apply. So, I mean, I think we can actually have a hand in that as well. I don't know necessarily if the planning board would do it and probably be the select board, but do you want us to send that stuff to our committee so people can see it?
Sure.
Great. And I think, you know, and complete streets,
They've
if
never
you can,
completed it. They've,
Huh?
they started the process, but they've never completed the complete streets.
no, we did
no.
it. I had to write the policy and we submitted it. And we're a complete streets community, so we can apply for funding. I did that with the select board's approval. So we're done. That was like a year and a half ago. So we're good in that regard. And for people who don't know, Complete Streets is designed to sort of encourage it's to encourage pedestrian and bicycle transportation. So it's traffic slowing, it's bike paths, it's pedestrian friendly, whatever's.
And for specific populations. So talk about students near schools or elder or disabled or, you know, so on. So it's, and a point made in the presentations was that these funds and much of the infrastructure, state funds and federal funds have big chunks for rural communities. It's not all going to big cities in eastern Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So-
Mary?
Understanding about complete streets was that there was also a survey that was available, which we don't have completed, but where they would do a survey of town roads. Did you know about that?
Well, I don't know about that. I think it's different from eligibility. Like it could be something that we do, but I know we're eligible to apply for funding because
If you go on their website, you'll
Yeah.
see Shutesbury, some towns have had surveys completed and Shutesbury has not.
Okay, so that's something we need. We
do
can
need
do,
that.
yeah,
We need that because in order to plan for changes, you need the surveying. The town does not even know how many culverts there are under the roads that it maintains. It has no idea. There's no record.
Ah,
No, that's what, Gail, you know that. You worked.
culverts, by the way, are
No, you
included
worked
in
for
the,
years, Gail, you worked for years on a draft notice of intent.
Yeah.
Which I have on my computer. And I'm trying to dust it off
oh boy,
because these things have to happen, right?
culverts are included in the small bridges thing. I don't have slides for that, but it's also on the MassDOT.
Right, but you can't get money if you don't know how many you have.
Right.
Or
Right.
what kind they are. You can't even quantify that.
What shape they're in, yeah.
well, the one thing, if I read correctly, the slides on Complete Streets that Gail sent was that there's a tier 2 funding, which is technical assistance, where we can get some of the assessment work done. Is that correct, Gail?
Yes.
So that might be our first stop in terms of, and I
Tier
think,
one, tier 1 is writing the policy, which you've already done. Tier 2 is then getting feasibility and setups. And then tier 3 is the actual project.
and I think that the next deadline is sometime in September.
September, yeah.
Yeah, so we can get our act together to do that. That would be pretty cool. People have other updates. I have some, but I want to give people a chance. So
I have a question.
yeah, go for it.
You know, I'm getting like a ton of emails, whether I had a ECAC email or not. And I'm wondering if like minutes and all the different things that say Gail or you or anyone is it on a Google Docs so that I can, okay, is it possible that things can, you know, once they're approved, be on a Google Doc? Is that legal or, you know,
What do you
so that we have like a one-stop for everything?
Well, they'll go on the town.
Well, we have a
website.
web page and the minutes will be posted on the web page.
Okay.
But yeah,
but-
but
Once they're
but-
approved, they're posted on the web page.
but receiving them in your inbox is sort of like you have to get them through email just so that we're all connected. So
Oh, yeah, but once they're approved and even like any documents, you know, we're just starting to get going. And I know I must have, you know, dozens of emails from everybody. And then there's a, you know, this answer and that answer. And I'm like, even-
That's why having a separate email is a good thing. So it all lives somewhere else.
No, it's the same. It's just
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
string. And
Yeah.
and
No,
it's
I know.
like save this one, but not the other 10.
Yeah. It's all management. Well, it's actually a segue to one thing I was thinking about, which is
Okay.
it seems like we're generating a lot of information, and some of what I have, these are different thoughts, but like Gail has sent out, and I think Graham sent out a resource about solar. And I was thinking in terms of that we could create, whether it's a Google Doc with just a listing or a web, and we have to have a link from our website to it. But it seems like if we want to be able to sort of save where those resources are. So I use for example, I don't know when it was, a week or two ago, Graham sent out the solar blog.
Yeah.
So it's just a URL, but there's good information. And then Gail has sent out several things. And so if we thought about a place where those could get
Right.
That's it.
cataloged and saved, then we could, and it's sort of, I think, we should have a link on our website about it, but it also should be couched as, this is nothing that the committee is endorsing. It's just educational materials for the members.
We call it resources. Just have a section of resources on the webpage and line items. They can click on them and go to the blog or go to the.
Yeah, I wouldn't call them, I would call them something such resources only because I want to make it really clear that we're not endorsing anything. It's because if there's a resource that we care about, it's going to be a higher level. This is really educational for us. So it's a lot more raw. So
Further information?
Yeah, I think it's more for our use. So it's just sort of like, if we know it's there and we start putting that stuff there as links, then we can go to it. We don't have to worry about, as Leslie's saying, sorting through all of our emails. But I think because we're a public committee, we just have to have a link to it with, somewhere on the page. So people know that we're looking at it and sharing that. So that was my one thought. The other thing was, I do think it would make sense as we're as we're starting to move forward to actually have things that are more intentionally shared, whether it's a second page on our webpage, on the webpage that we want to make people aware of. So it's parsing it a little bit. Like there's things we're learning and there's things we want the community to be
Right.
aware of as they go. And so I think we might want to put that on our webpage and just start building that and discussing. And I don't have a specific recommendation yet, but it could be as easy as some of the funding sources we're discussing, just for people to, not that they're going to apply to MVP or Complete Streets or anything, but I'm not sure what, but do both of those things sound, as reasonable approaches that we can sort of tweak as we go?
Mhm. So a couple of categories of things is what you're saying.
Yeah, one, just because, you're constantly researching. So I was like, how am I going to track this stuff that Gail's sending me? And
Right.
it seems like we want to have a reservoir for that. Miriam.
I'm saying good night.
Good night, Miriam. Say hi to
Good night,
Rob.
Miriam.
Good night, Miriam.
Take good care.
So Marianne, we're almost wrapping up. So, but
Yeah, I at least wanted to come and apologize. I'm so sorry. We had a bit of a flood here at Sirius, and I got involved with that, and I completely forgot I was presenting this evening. So,
well, we're going to have you come next meeting if that's okay. We just have to figure out when that is. But would you be willing to come another time?
I absolutely would be willing to come. I'm in Scotland until like May 20, so it might be after that.
Okay, well, that is good to know.
So
So-
much apologies for, and if you want me to send something in written form before that, I could also do that. So whatever works best for you all.
That might be helpful to send something just, so we can sort of get educated. And if you're coming back on May 20th, you're going to be on May 21st, right?
May 21st. Where am I going to be on May 21st?
Is that
Town
Tuesday?
meeting.
Oh, town meeting. Oh,
We
I know
have a
May.
big vote coming up.
Okay. I'll put that in the calendar. I was thinking more about the 22nd. There's the Smart Solar Shutesbury is having a march, I think, and a rally.
Yes, but before that, we need to vote on a little building that has no running water. So this, you should go to town meeting. But anyway, I get off track. I did, I did have a couple of other quick things I wanted to throw out for your consideration before I wrap up. One was I've been working on the MVP action grant proposal. I was working on it today, and Rita pointed out that we need letters of support to go with it. And unlike, bigger places that have nonprofits and businesses and things like that that can submit, we really don't only have our committees and maybe village neighbors. So I was going to ask if it's okay with the committee that I write a letter of support from ECAC for our municipal vulnerability preparedness action grant, basically saying we support it. Okay, cool. And I'll write it and then I'll share it with you, but it's going to be pretty pro forma kind of stuff. And the fact that my name's not on the application, it's sort of good that it'll be on the letter. So thank you for that. And then the other two thoughts, these are totally different. One is I was doing a little research on microgrids, which is we might want to look into. I don't know that much about it, but in terms of, one of this generation solution. So not just like a big blown thing, but sort of a small one. And Marianne, maybe if you know stuff when you talk to us, I just sort of came across my radar, and if I learn more, I'll share it out with everybody and then we can sort of pick it up. But it seems like yet another
I mean, I
alternative.
actually have a really good article on that I like a lot in terms of a distributed energy systems, like really distributed energy systems that build climate resilience with community ownership. So how do I send stuff to you all?
Yeah, it's ECAC, so it's ECAC@shutesbury.org. And we'll all get it.
Okay, great.
And Henry, I'll send it to you if I get it. So thank you. And then the last thing is just a question. And I'm not sure where I saw this, but I feel like I saw that for the warrant article for town meeting, there's a proposal to buy 3 new police cars. I don't know if anyone else has seen this. I don't know where I saw it, but it struck me. And then I was reading the Gazette this morning, and like Leverett's voting at their town meeting about getting hybrid police cars. And it seems like this, something that we should, we're coming late to the capital planning discussion this year, but buying 3, conventional police cars seems like not the way to go. If we're going to, because we're going to have them for a bunch of years. So Gail, do you know anything about it?
No, not about that, but there's a bylaw, old bylaw, that purchase of vehicles are to be fuel efficient, or it's in the list of bylaws.
Yeah. Well, fuel efficient could be different than, I mean.
Doesn't specify hybrid or electric, no, that's for sure. It's
Yeah. So I don't want to like wreak havoc, but at least as a person, I was thinking of considering asking that, but I thought I'll just bring that question to the committee. Graham.
For police, you would think an electric vehicle might do it because they don't drive that many miles in a day. So
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Marianne?
One other possibility is if 3 electric vehicles seems pretty expensive, Co-op Power is also just starting up a biodiesel plant. So the other possibility as a transition fuel is to buy a diesel car and run it on biodiesel, much cleaner fuel source than
Okay.
gas.
Thank you. So I think I might just raise this as a person because it's a much more complicated thing, but I just wanted to throw it out there. It seems like going forward, I raise it as like, it struck me that as we're getting next year, when there's a capital planning discussion, we might want to like think about it. And it came to me when I was thinking about the survey and other committees and how we sort of want to, get involved. that these might be some of the questions of like, okay, if we're doing capital planning, what are some of the guidelines that we might want to request people think about? So we're not.
New
so-
structures, et cetera. Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like, you know, this is how you integrate change, is you sort of like think about the purchasing process a little bit.
Well, that is.
Yeah. So anyway, and anyone else have any thoughts before we wrap up? So I think the last item before we adjourn is if we met every 2 weeks, which is our current schedule, we would be meeting, let's see, today is what's today? Today is the 24th. So it'd be May 7th.
Today's
So-
Today's the
26th.
26th.
Huh?
Today is the 26th.
Today's the 26th. Oh, I'm in the wrong month. That's why. Sorry. So it would be the 10th. Is that
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Okay, May 10th. So does that work? Do we want to keep doing every 2 weeks for a while and then at some point shift gears?
Sure, or we
Okay.
could go to 3 weeks at some point, or.
Yeah. Well, why don't we
Yeah.
do May 10th and then we can maybe skip over town meeting week because that'll be busy. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so our next meeting will be May 10th. And let's see. Oh. Graham's taking minutes the next meeting.
Agreed.
And Miriam, if she is around, will take it. And then Leslie, you go after that. Does that sound good? Cool. And if for some reason Miriam's got something going on, I'll let you know, and maybe you could just step into that one. Great. So another good meeting. Thank you all. So any motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A second? Okay, let's do the Gale thumbs up. Who's in agreement? Okay, wonderful. Thank you for joining us, Mary Ann and Henry, and thank you all for joining yet again. This is my favorite committee ever. Have a great night.
You
Thank you,
too.
you too.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.